Once again, we urge you to share the feed on Facebook.
Hi there, I'm Faida, and today we're going to be talking about the African diaspora in Mexico.
Whether UK likes it or not, I have to leave this country.
I became a member and a chief of the Vice Lord all in one day.
All these guys wins out of the north at Midway Airport.
His father.
Rice and beans. Okay, kids, we have had to come to an end of this beautiful set.
It's not about this.
This is the inside account of a week that brought the Rainbow Nation to its knees.
Right, essentially trying to inculcate into this. Welcome to the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna, aka Alinko. Today is January 30th. The month has literally come to an end, and we are looking forward to coming month, which is Black History Month. A lot of conversations regarding the history of Black people here in this country, and the struggles, the challenges they went through, what they've been able to overcome, their successes, their achievements. All of that will be uncovered. It looks as if for Black people, well, I can speak of the African community. It looks as if we do a lot of research and connection of Black history to our own history as Africans. Some Africans here in Chicago during Black History Month. Well, that said, I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of us are looking forward to this special month. It's also the month, next month, which is February, is also going to be the month of love, of course, Valentine's and all of that. But today we are going to be talking about a very important subject to all Africans and to the diaspora as well. And today we have two experts, two gentlemen in the diaspora community who are going to help us discuss Africa's ally. Who should be Africa's ally? Do we have an ally? Should we be strengthening our allies if we have one in this 21st century? And should it be the US, China, or Russia? And before I do that, again, welcome to the show. Once you are here on the Facebook feed, please feel free to share it to your friends and your network so we can collectively build our communities. Also, we are also live on YouTube, and you can follow us there as well. When you come on again, please like the page, share it, so we can all partake in this very important conversation. Once again, gentlemen, you're welcome to the Progressive Mind Show. Ed Mensah, Professor Ed Mensah is here. We have Nanaya Afrifa. Nanaya Afrifa is not a stranger. He's been here before. So we will take a moment to acknowledge our great guest. Nanaya, welcome to the show again.
Thank you, Alinko.
It's a pleasure. And then Professor Edward Mensah. Ed, this is the first time. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. And before I do so, let me take a minute to read out the background of Professor Edward Mensah. He's an emeritus associate professor of health economics and public health informatics at the Health Policy and Administration Division at the School of Public Health, University of Illinois at Chicago, and an affiliate professor at the Department of Business economics at the School of Management, the University of Life at the University of Lille, France. Sorry. He is the external examiner of the Nyansapor College, an affiliate of the University of Cape Coast in Ghana. Nyansapor College is an offspring academic institution of world-acclaimed Institute of Diplomatic Practice and Development Policies based in Accra, Ghana. The mandate of that school is to train future diplomats to accelerate Africa's advancement towards sustainable development and integration into the global diplomatic ecosystem. A lot of accolades, but I'll read the last paragraph and we can get to the thick of things. He's also the founding director of the Public Health Informatics program at the School of Public Health and the founding editor of the online journal of Public Health Informatics. He served as a subject expert matter in value-driven investment in health information technologies with a global health of U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. He has a lot of accolades. He's a great family man. You're here in Chicago, resides from Ghana. He's a Ghanaian descendants. He is a product of the University of Ghana, Legon, and the CEO of Water Clarity, Let Them Drink. Again, he has a lot of accolades, but because of time, we would like to continue with the conversation. Ed, once again, you're welcome, and it's a pleasure for us to have you on this platform.
Thank you for the introduction.
You're welcome. Nane Afrifa, please feel free. Nane Afrifa is an analyst when it comes to geopolitics and African politics. Nane Afrifa is also a business analyst by profession. Nane, feel free to give us a bit more about your background before we get into the thick of things today.
Well, thank you for the introduction, but can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. I don't think what I do currently for a living has any bearing on what we're going to discuss, but
you're right.
I am an avid student and of international politics. You know,
Okay.
I went to college here back in 1994 at Illinois Wesleyan University, where I majored in economics. I took a lot of classes in international political economy, and back on campus, you know, it was really heated every time, like every American campus, heated debate on politics, international politics. So come from a pretty political background myself from Ghana, but grandfather was an Nkrumah guy, father was a Busia man, you know, so I do have some kind of grasp when it comes to my own African side of politics. And then also having been embedded in this United States of America, which has its footprint all over the world, you know, it behooves me to understand how this relates to our whole well-being in the political platform. So
great.
Yes. Great.
Thank you so much. Ed, anything you want to add to your many accolades?
Oh, no, yeah, I have a link there. Yeah, I have been around in academic environment for far too long between United States, I mean, from Midwest, University of Chicago, and all those places, and then to Europe, and now linking to Africa, because I really want to see how the Institute of Diplomatic Studies works very well, because it is a place where we're developing diplomats for Africa. You know, those diplomats used to be trained in Geneva. It didn't make any sense, because when they retire, they come back home and they're still in the diplomatic corps. So they decided to put together a college, which is in the 7th year now, and I think it's a good idea. And with that, I'm actually going back to my political economy, again, trying to do what Nana Afrifa has been doing for quite a long time. And I'm getting there now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The conversation about Africa's ally, some people say there's nothing like an ally, there is political interest. Nana, can you help us break the difference between the two for us?
Well, basically, in international relations, we do have, I mean, I would give a more
not an expert opinion, but based on experience, right? What I know. And I think a lot of you can share the same view. We do have blocks of alliances, right? We have NATO. In the past, we used to have the Eastern Bloc when the Soviet Union was there. Currently, we have something coming up as BRICS, right?
Yes.
And we do have our own African Union, which is supposedly to be an alliance of African countries, even though in reality they all have their own interest. So the question beckons whether it is expedient for us to couch this kind of conversation to whether we align strictly with particular geopolitical forces, or we just align based on our interest, right? And it looks like, from what I've known and what I'm seeing right now, it looks like African countries are still not learning.
We're not learning.
You know, we're not learning. I mean, look at our country, Ghana, for a while. I mean, it's so despicable how the government aligns over things that she should, even if anything, the government should stay away.
Okay.
Right?
All right. We'll come
to that.
Right. We'll come to that. Ed, are the two the same? If you want to help us, please. We want to know political allies or political interest. I mean, are they the same? Are these allies, this so-called thing ally, a real thing that nations actually abide by?
To a large extent, a few of them abide by the allies and the interests.
Okay.
The big ones, the interests and the allies converge. All their interests are, solid, and they tend to look for people who share the same interests, and they become allies. So in some instances, they can be the same, but in the way I see it's practiced now. The interests are malleable. People keep changing their interests depending upon who satisfies their needs and wants.
Okay.
And the allies tend to be those that help you, propagate your ideologies.
Okay. They help you propagate your ideologies.
Beliefs. Yeah.
Okay. They come to your aid in times of war. They help you economically.
Yeah. So in fact, so when you have new and real and imaginary problems, they tend to call on these people who will be supporting them to execute their interests, and those are, allies, and therefore you really can't separate them that much in their practices.
All right. Does Africa have one? Have we ever had a strong ally?
Well, that's I'll give my take, and then I will go back to you, because he has been studying this in college throughout. While I was writing economic equations, he was he was dealing with the political economy part of it. When we emerged from colonialism into the new colonial era,
right,
we inherited the allies of the people who were ruling us. So our leaders, our rulers, like if you are French, and France has an ally in terms of United States and England, those automatically become your allies. And if you are America, those allies, Liberia was the only one that really was close to America. But we, France and England, we fell automatically into their arms, and therefore we didn't have any chance to define allies. Because what you do is you find your needs and interests, and you find those who can support that. Those become your allies. But we had to inherit. What we had was these two blocks NATO and Warsaw, we inherited them. So we Ghana, anyway, we go to that study later on, where we belong. Yeah.
Nanea, have we always had one as a continent, Africa?
Well, yes, in some way, even though we've always had interferences from our former colonial powers. If you look back, right, let's look at Africa. Africa was colonized, right? And we went to decolonization. And decolonization, there we saw our enemies, right? The people who colonized us were not our friends because they didn't want to see us liberated. So if you look at fundamentally what made a lot of African countries veer towards some of the emerging powers such as the Soviet Union and China and India, is because these were the countries that put their resources behind us to decolonize. I remember a story when Ghanaian soldiers went to Burma to fight for the British. They said the Indians asked them, "Why are you fighting for the British? Are you free yourself?" So when they came back, that was when Sergeant Ajete and all these people, they started clamoring for freedom. And that sparked their struggle for independence. But we need to understand one more thing, though. We do have competing interests within African countries. I think conscientiously, right, we should be aligned with people who are just like us, who've been oppressed, who are still trying to liberate themselves from the shackles of imperialism. But then the point is, we do have people who benefit from our old alliances. And that seems to have overtaken our politics until this day, that you may have a government in a country, right, making decisions in the name of the country, but that doesn't really represent the overall opinion of the people of a country. I mean, so this is what, I don't want to digress too much. We still have time, but this is what's been going on. And it's made us look a little bit waffly, right? We waffle, we are not really trusted, and sometimes we lose respect. Even though recently, with the emergence of China as an economic power, some African countries are becoming a little bold because, you know what, they don't always have to go to their old traditional Western economic allies to get what they want, because they can basically go to the Chinese and get it. So that gives them some leverage.
In this dispensation, Ed, feel free to respond to the question that I asked earlier, but in this dispensation where there are rumors from different school of thoughts that Europe may go to war with Africa, or I don't know if America would do that, but there's this whole conversation going. Of course, there's also the school of thought that's saying China is bent on colonizing Africa. Now, when you hear conversations like this, you think that Africa is vulnerable when it comes to defending itself as a continent, because we don't seem to have that, I'll say, fighting power, the army that we need to defend the continent, at least in my purview. But two of you have studied, have looked into this enough. You think that if anything of that were to happen, would Africa be in a place to defend itself? Ed?
Well, Africa may try to defend itself, but we don't have the guns, we don't have the trained people, we don't have the organizational structure to actually hold our own for a long time, because a war is not something we just start in a month and it ends. Look at what's happening in Ukraine, it never ends. When it begins, nobody knows where it's going to end. If we want to fight somewhere in the middle we will crumble quite easily, because the army that Kwame Nkrumah wanted years ago, we never formed it. And so that again, the war part, I see no reason why Europe wants to go to war with Africa.
And you as subject experts, you have not heard any rumors like that in your...
No. I mean, I know there's going to be a geopolitical conflict in Africa, because when we are moving into the new age, digital age, the resources we need for transforming our economy, global economy, towards the green revolution, green stage, the green state, are mostly in Africa.
Right.
China and Africa, a whole lot of them in Africa. And so you talk about them. Now, even you're talking about uranium and all those things.
Yes.
All of our in Africa. Lithium now is being found in 3 places in Ghana. Nigeria have lithium stock. We have all of those, including solar. If you want solar, we command about 50 to 60% of the solar energy resources in the world. So there will be a conflict. There will be a clash in Africa. Okay. I don't know whether that will be taking the shooting form. And that doesn't mean that if we try to form armies and fight, we can. I'm really not sure it's go to a shooting point because enemies are crazy. But I don't see how.
There's going to be a clamor for who wants to. Now, people are saying, how is it that Africa is just there, and it seemed like anybody that wants to take over Africa's resources or Africa's economy easily has that access. It's like if China wants to do it, they surely can. If Europeans have done it in the past, and it looks like if they want to do it, looking like the stronghold of France on some of African countries. But go ahead, Ed.
Yeah. So when they want to come to Africa to take these things, we let them because we are so vulnerable and so weak. There's nothing it's fundamental. What we consume for our sustenance are mainly all from the external world. We inherited a form of education that didn't help us out because what it does is it produces brains and expertise for Europe and America, and not for Africa. You get a PhD in whatever, you come back to Africa, you can't even fix a bolt. Or you have 2 PhDs in engineering, but you still can't fix the bicycles, that kind of stuff. So our education and our needs societally have not converged. We still look outside, and therefore we need them. We feel we need them, and the resources are with us. So if Ghana says no, Togo will say yes. If Africa will say yes, Nigeria, Ghana. You remember during Kwame Nkrumah's time, Tafawa Balewa in the north, Nigerians had a different idea. Ufobanya had a different idea. So with that, even Togo next to us, when they really had a good idea to go with Kwame Nkrumah like Olympio was gotten rid of, and the thing became a mess again. So basically, the interference they will is because we think we need them for our sustenance. Once we decide to show that we can actually satisfy our internal needs according to our level of definition of what we think we need, they will slow down. Now we need them too much. So that's it.
Nane, I don't know if you want to add your 2 cents to this.
Well, I don't. This whole model that, or this whole idea that Africa is just there to be exploited. Okay. Right. It comes from the West, and I think we are not bold enough to understand that when it comes to the forces that impede our development are the very people who colonize us because they inherited their riches or their development from our suffering. This is something a lot of Africans are not bold enough to understand or admit. When they bring in China and all that stuff, I don't buy that stuff. The Chinese don't operate that way. Let me tell you a story. And this came from the Greek foreign minister, Vakovis. He says he was in Ethiopia. And the Chinese figured out that Ethiopia has some oil, all right? So the Chinese offered the Ethiopians, look, hey guys, you guys don't have railways, you don't have electricity. We do everything for you for free. Well, it's not for free, right? What they were trying to do is they were trying to position themselves in a position where when it comes to who gets to exploit their oil, the Ethiopians will give it to them. Eventually, that's what they did. You can look at some other powers. Look at Niger. What just happened in Niger and Burkina Faso. Okay. We have powers who colonize us, who enslave us, telling our leaders to wage war on these people because their people said they didn't want their leader. You see the difference here? Yes. So we need to be very careful when people try to say, oh, someone wants to colonize us. Who wants to colonize us other than the people who benefited from past colonialism of Africa?
Okay.
Recently, they even have all these powers have summits where they invite African leaders. Even Italy is having a summit of African leaders. What does Italy? What can Italy really offer Africa?
Okay.
Italy is a pretty small economic power, but Italy has identified that if they let Africa go, right, they are going to suffer. So the point is, we don't have to detach ourselves from any country.
Okay.
We need to relate to them based on our interests. I mean, this is the way I believe. There's so many things. If the Europeans want to give us something, well, they need to give us something that we see as valuable, and we give them something that we see as valuable. We shouldn't be in this old paradigm where they just take or they bribe some people and they give away our heirloom. You know what I mean? And this is where the Chinese, and I wouldn't even say the Russians. The Russians have so many resources. They don't even care about resources. They are just there to build diplomatic relations so they can have some kind of friends in the UN, because they don't need our resources. Russia is so rich in resources. I don't even think they need anybody's resources. They think other people want their resources. But you see, they have nuclear weapons to protect their resources. We don't. The Chinese don't have resources. But they tell us what they want. Right. They come, they tell you, Alinko, I want your wife. I want your daughter. But I understand your daughter, you have a son who wants my wife. We can make that exchange. Right. But the problem we can't deal successfully with the Chinese is we go singularly. I mean, a small country like Ghana, if you negotiate with the Chinese, maybe it might be better than what you get from maybe Britain, right? But you're still not going to get enough. If you guys were basically negotiating collectively, let's say Ghana, Nigeria, the whole of the sub-region, then we could squeeze a lot more from them. But Ghana wants the same thing. Togo wants the same thing. We are too small to kind of impact the negotiations in our favor, even though, the Chinese have a saying that it's a win-win whichever way, right? Even if we get small, we win, right? It's better than maybe in the Congo where people just loot everything and the country doesn't get anything.
Okay. So in the wake of all of this, and thank you also for sharing, wouldn't it make sense that Africa strategizes and say, look, like from what you're saying, if everything you said regarding Russia's intent or Russia's attempt to, Russia's relationship with African countries, would it make sense for Africa to say, okay, Russia doesn't need too much from us. They're now about to loot our resources. So when it comes to military power, let's work with them and strengthen our military, because sometimes war is inevitable. And so when that happens, then Africa can be ready to deal with any adversary that may come on, that may arise. Wouldn't that be a strategy? Because it looks like that's what Niger, the new president of Niger, is doing. Ed.
Well, I will say that the idea of arming yourself with one region, one power, and really making it known that these guys are going to build my army and train us and give us the resources, all we need to fight. Don't put yourself in one corner. You see, friendship can be. I remember Siad Barre's trajectory from Russia to the West and back to Russia and back to the West. Somalia had gone through evolution. Soviet Union.
Russia is not the Soviet Union. Let's make that distinction.
Yes, Soviet Union is going from Soviet Union to the West, back to Soviet Union. Once you are completely in this corner and not being smart enough to say that I'm not here looking for a fight. I'm just protecting myself, my mom, and your politics is also fair, because one thing you want to do is that you don't want to inherit your allies' enemies.
Okay.
You easily inherit somebody's enemy. My father used to tell me that a long time ago. Pick friends, but make sure you don't inherit a friend's enemies. What we do is, once we go to the West, you inherit the West enemies. You go to Soviet Union, now Russia, you inherit the Russian's enemy. It's not that simple. So what I see, the Chinese, Africa going for the Chinese, that basically, All our institutions are English or French. All
Right.
our institutions, completely. Universities, farm technology, whatever, A to Z, all of them, the books, the laboratories. What are you going to, when will you attain that level with the Chinese language? When?
Well,
What's the point of giving those things up? So what you
well,
do, basically, in my mind, is you basically not play both sides, but I like the non-aligned when it was around, which is like
okay.
the BRICS going to be now.
Right.
Something like that. We say we're here, we'll pick our friends, and anybody who treats us well, you'll be our friend, but not like, look, I want to go to the Niger stuff. How will Niger? France was paying 0.83 euros per kilogram for uranium from Niger, and the same kilogram is 220 euros
Correct.
at the world market. For 10 years, for years, it was paying pennies per
For
kilogram
decades.
for
Yes.
nothing. To the extent that, so my problem is that we're having problems with the West a lot now because they have been unfair. They have been patently unfair, stealing our resources a lot, and then made up an economic system that does not improve our well-being, but borrowing and in debt, IMF, whatever, you never get out of that. My problem is now they know we know that they have been conning us. So when we go to negotiate with them, not Ghana alone, Nigeria, not African Union, so that we say, well, this is how much we compute that you owe us, not through reparations of colonialism or that, but through the resources you have stolen. We know, you know, the books are there. You can open the books and say, well, you bought this much gold from Ghana over this at this price or price, but at this price is a world market. All that, and they will see really that this is how much you owe. Now, pay us back properly. Now, in terms of institutions, in terms of development projects, but saying I want to have an ally, you know, those things are pretty old-fashioned. It's not taking you. It just basically means that I might want to go to fight a war with you. I don't want that.
For what you're saying to materialize, it looks like there has to be a lot of unity or like-mindedness when it comes to African leaders. But currently, Nana, as you said, we have 3 African nations that are already coming out of ECOWAS, right? How do African nations gather any momentum to be able to go out there and negotiate as a group with nations like China, Russia, and the U.S.? Nana, if we already have this, first of all, what do you make of those 3 guys coming out of ECOWAS? Is that a great move?
I think it's a good thing because I think ECOWAS sabotaged them and betrayed them as brothers.
Okay.
Right? It's the same thing with even South Africa taking this Palestinian issue to ICG, and we have our own country, Ghana, and Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana, couldn't even support South Africa, even though we do have a free visa
South Africa
protocol with them.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine, do we really think Israel will take the side of their ally, even if their ally is wrong over us? I mean, this is some of the stupid things we do. You know what I mean? Now, the thing with Niger, Mali, and what's the other country? Burkina?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, these countries are some of the poorest countries in the continent, right?
Well,
and we don't really speak to their fundamental poverty. You know, I don't really believe in alliances, but I do believe in interest. Okay, there's always this talk about the Chinese. You know that nobody forced the Chinese to come to Africa. Everybody left Africa, and the Chinese saw an opportunity. And if you could look back, let me tell you a story about Djibouti that a lot of people don't know, and it's on YouTube. Djibouti has military bases from the UK, the US, France, and some of these other powers. The Chinese opened a base over there. It's a kind of a UN base, right? But when the Chinese went over there, they realized Djibouti didn't have access to potable water because the water is very saline, right? So what the Chinese did was they went as far as Ethiopia and carried water 1,000 kilometers to Djibouti so these people can get water. Whereas Americans and the British have been there for so long and knew these people didn't have water, but they didn't care.
No.
I mean, if you're an African leader, what would that say about the other allies or the other people there? So see, these are some of the relationships we got to build. We got to build relationships based on what we can get, not what other people squeeze us to accept. You see what I mean? And back to your question about military assistance. Yes, look at a country like Uganda. Uganda has been a Western proxy for a very long time in Congo. But when it came to military assistance, they realized they could get a better deal with the Russians. So they went to the Russians. This is how you should manipulate the world, man. You shouldn't just stick your whole eggs in one basket thinking, you know. But then the problem is with the West has this tendency of squeezing, quote unquote, our balls to get what they want. The only way we can outwit them is to come together collectively and bargain with them. I mean, look at Ghana, 600 million IMF loan, and we've been thrown around. I mean, it's $600 million, a lot of money for a country to be dictated to.
Well, but prior to that, they've been given a couple, right? I think they went for $1 billion, and then they gave them some of that billion, and so the 600 is like an installment payment.
That's the thing, but even $1 billion is not good money for us to be dictated upon.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agreed. And so back to the ally conversation. Well, you know, the U.S., if the U.S. as powerful they are, have allies. You know, when it comes to I think France and not France, the UK, NATO. Of course, Israel. Of course, they have NATO, right? So why would Africa be, you know, and then the United Kingdom? So why wouldn't Africa want to do that too? I mean, go ahead. I mean, Russia too have their allies. Go ahead, Daniel.
Look at this. Who are the allies of the U.S.? You realize most of the allies of the U.S. are past colonialists, people who oppress other people to enrich themselves. So you know the kind of alliance that they have is an alliance to dictate to other countries.
Well, but
there are other alliances who are the Russia's alliance?
Yes. So
Russia's alliance at China?
Yes.
Yeah. But they believe they need that alliance to neutralize this alliance that is always on the offensive against other nations, smaller countries.
Right. So for the same reasons these nations are building alliances to whether to neutralize or to compete or to stay safe. Well, Africa also need to be.
But you don't have nuclear weapons. You don't have nuclear weapons to defend yourself. So you
don't
play that game.
How about Kwame Nkrumah's nuclear project in atomic? Yeah, but Aliko, the point is we don't have it. We are sitting ducks, right? This is the thing I always tell a lot of Africans that you cannot live in an island, right? We live in a world where most of the countries that probably don't even like us have the capability to destroy us. And this is why you need some form of alliances. That's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you know what? Let's go back. The Chinese, you know, it's because of Africa that China came back to the United Nations.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that. African countries voted for China to come because the West wanted Taiwan to be the representative of the Chinese people. And this is where you remember Reagan and Nixon using the racial epithet against the Tanzanians because they were happy. You need some form of alliances. But you see, we've dealt with the West for so long, we can't say we're going to break away from the West. It doesn't make sense. But at the same time, we need to readjust our relationship a little bit. It cannot be based on only what they can get from us.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Ed, you want to add your 2 cents to that?
Oh yeah, it's right on point. We need alliances to the extent that we have an equal say in the structure of the alliance. See, some alliances are totally unequal. It means it throws some pennies at you, and then before you know, you send them a battalion to go help them fight in here and fight there, and that kind of stuff. We, as African countries, can come together to form some basic alliances for which, and it's not a deterrent, is to make sure that when you're coming to fight us, excuse me, it's not going to be just that easy.
Right.
We'll be lying there, but it's not a matter of an offensive force that we really want to, excuse me.
There you go. Nana, while he's taking a break, right? Nanel, while he's taking a break, let's talking about alliance. We have one going on right there, right now at our backyard with BRICS, right? Which you mentioned earlier. Do you think it's a good idea for a lot of African countries? Should it trickle down into West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, so that BRICS become that block that we are part of, which gives us the leverage and that backing to be able to bargain with some of these superpowers?
Yeah. BRICS is, I mean, who are the major members of BRICS? The Chinese,
South Africa,
the Russians, the Indians. Most of the people in this world are members of BRICS, right? Let me tell you a story. Yeah, look at Argentina. Argentina was member of BRICS. They voted this
they just joined, right?
This Trump guy, he came. Well, you know explicitly he's a Western puppet. So he pulled himself out of BRICS. He put Argentina out of BRICS. You know what the Chinese did to him? They had a deal with them for $6 billion. They also canceled it, which makes sense, right? Because the only way you get that deal is to be a member of BRICS.
Right.
So if we have BRICS, the BRICS countries also have a lot of money. Then we don't always have to go to the World Bank and the IMF for development funds, right? We could tap into BRICS. Now, once these Bretton Woods organizations like the World Bank and the IMF, they begin to understand that there's competition, right? They may also loosen up some of their hold on us, right? Well, the West, the Western leaders these days, they don't care. All they do is they send the bombs, right? But if you can get some guarantees that, if you're going to send the bombs and I'm going to get some S-400s from Russia to take the bombs out, that's good. Look, we are not in the old paradigm of the Cold War socialism and capitalism. Russia is a capitalist country. China is a capitalist country, right? Most Africa are capitalist, which comes with some risk because, the First and Second World War was a result of capitalism, people competing for the resources of the world, right? Germany felt cheated, right? And Germany felt cheated because when they carved Africa, Germany didn't get a lot. That's why they felt cheated. A lot of people don't know that. So that is the danger. But in the meantime, I think we can milk this situation to our advantage because Africa is the last sphere that is not well developed, that really has opportunity of growth going forward, right?
Yes.
And I mean, look at infrastructure. There's the Chinese always say, why do the West always have to say China is doing this? They say Africa needs help. We can all help, right? Why is it that if China is helping some country, you have to see that China is exploiting them? When, I mean, for example, Blinken or one of them, what's her name? She came out with Hillary Clinton that China is colonizing Africa, that stuff.
Right.
She went into Zambia, went through an airport that was built by Chinese.
Well,
you went through an airport that was built by Chinese to tell them that they're colonizing you. They're colonizing another country when you haven't offered anything.
Well, if China is building some of this important infrastructure of nations like airports, police stations, harbors, well, I think it's easy for people to deduce that this is preparation to take over because eventually they own these important institutions. And
no, I don't think.
Okay, Ed.
I don't think.
The Chinese have so much money. The Chinese can build an airport in 10 days. Why do they need some airport in Uganda? What is the value to them?
Well, to own the resources. You just said China doesn't have resources, so they probably need the resources.
Tell you though. They tell you we want your resources, and we're going to give you something you don't need. Okay. They don't come. They don't come saying we're going to bring you democracy and then come and steal your resources.
They don't care. I hear you, Ed.
See, it is when the West keep saying. I go to economic conferences and I hear people telling. Papers are given with many complicated equations to how Africa will end up broke when China takes over Africa. It's really seen as a very bad thing. So in many situations, my colleagues in economics have been asking me, Ed, what do you think is it good that the Chinese are taking over Africa now? As all I say is that I think you're jealous. You know, we had you. It's like mistreating your wife or your partner, taking her for granted, taking him for granted, and they're doing anything you want all over the years. This is a human being, and this person is seeing that you are not satisfying my needs very well. You're not listening to me. You don't even consider. You don't even know I exist. What I have, you take what you want. One day, when the person changes his or her mind to get an alternative person, you lost her. You lost him. Chinese, the West had us, like I kept saying, our educational system, our technologies, our legal system, our trade system,
our religion,
infrastructure, everything. It's not Chinese, it's not Russian, it's French or English. That's the point. Yeah, they know it. So now you didn't build the railroad. Well, yes, you didn't. Chinese found out that we need it. So they came and they built it. So you can't say that we are going to China. We're not going to China. We're going to somebody who is satisfying the needs that we have.
Okay.
With that,
go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, with that, I tell my colleagues that treat your partner very well. The next phase for Africa in all these negotiations is fundamentally, we don't know the value of what we have. We don't. The textbooks that we use, all the ones, I don't care which school you went to, MIT, Chicago, whatever you went to, economic professor, ABC, we are not taught how to properly value your endowments, your resources, the ones that you have not yet exploited. They have value. They have massive economic value. Now the West sees those things as zero value. So they can say that Niger is very poor, one of the poorest countries. Wait a minute. Your well-being, your richness, your development is based upon Niger. It's based upon Congo. So how can you tell me you are very developed and rich, per capita income this, and I have pennies and I'm poor, when you know that you stole my resources and didn't pay for that properly? If you had paid the market price for my resources, maybe I would have developed my school, my hospital, my clinics, and my roads and all properly. You did not. So it's hypocrisy for this guy to say that country is the poorest in the world. That's garbage nonsense. We don't know the value of the resources we are sitting on. If we know, somebody asked me, how do you do that? A simple equation can, basically, I can sketch out how to find the value of the uranium that you have in mind yet. So when you approach your negotiators, they know the value of what you have.
And now, we don't know.
We don't know. Now, if you don't know the value, how can you price it?
Right.
You might think it's zero price. Right. All over the continent, this paradigm shift where we approach negotiations based on the point of view of putting the value of what we are sitting on now on the table that we are talking about. We don't know that. So that when we go, we get pennies. We will get pennies. When we go to Chinese, we will still get pennies. When we go to Russians and Cubans, we will still get pennies, because we don't come from the point of view of knowing that this thing we're talking about that you need, this is actually the value.
Okay.
Take chocolate, take cocoa, take these things. We don't know the value.
Well said, gentlemen. Now, we don't know the value. We don't know the value, so we're speaking to Africans. But we also know that we have some of the best brains on this planet. It's evident in the two of you sitting here, the work you've done in this country, what you've achieved. A lot of Africans that have achieved, great feats in this country and elsewhere, when they leave Africa, some Africans who were not doing so well come here, and then they're able to succeed in every endeavor of life. So what I'm saying, these are all testament to the brains that we have. So the brains that are that are on the continent. So how is it that we have so much brains, we have resources, but yet we are not able to, like you said, value our own resources and bargain to the benefit of our people, which means that there are bad leaders. And so are we saying that these crop of leaders who are leading Africa now are the reasons why we're having these challenges? And so we need the younger generation, we need a more educated younger generation who have national identity, African identity, and can be able to stand for the people of Africa. Nana?
I let Nana go because
let me you know what? I don't subscribe to this bad leadership stuff. Senna.
You don't?
You know why?
I want to know.
That if 9 out of 10 of our leaders is always bad. I mean, the ratio, we know. You remember those times. I remember those times when we were in secondary school. The same people were in Legon agitating for all these socialist ideas and justice. This they got into power. What did they do? They looted just like they looted even more.
Why though? Why have we had that?
Well, it's the educational system. We are not brought up to be patriotic. You know what I mean?
Because we're colonized by the West, right?
Yes. You know, Ayikwe wrote a book. He was telling about his experiences at Achimota School when those times, the Gorgeous Peg era. We need to understand that we are smart because civilization started from the ancient Egyptians. Yeah. We are the people who brought civilizations to the world. And would you believe even a lot of Africans, when he told them this, they won't even want to buy it?
Of course, a lot of Africans on the
what kind of education we have, right?
Yes.
We have the education to work well into setups by the colonialist.
Yep.
Right? We haven't been able to do things together for ourselves. We don't work very well as a group. Right? So I think, we really need to, I always like the Chinese model. You know why I like the Chinese model?
No. Because
the Chinese were very oppressed people. I met a professor when I was in college. He used to be John Kuru. He used to teach at Northwestern. He was professor of African American, and he worked with Nkrumah. He's been around. The guy was like an encyclopedia. Before China became so well known and a major competitor to the West, he told me this. Do you know most of the Chinese got their knowledge from the Soviets, from the Russians? They all went to school in Eastern Europe. And he said this. He said, when we were in Eastern Europe, at the end of our education, the African and the Caribbean students were buying sound system stereos, shoes, clothing, and the Chinese were packing books. All the books, they wanted to take it home. And they asked them, hey, why are you taking books? You know what the Chinese told them? He said, we never again in a China mouse country would it be called a dog again. They remember what Europeans did to them. They do. So the rise of China is a sense of pride to every Chinese, even the people in Taiwan. What about us? We are so quick to join the enemy against our people. Look at what we did to Burkina Faso, Mali, and what's the other country? Niger. That was despicable. We wanted to wage war on our own people, and everybody in Africa knew we were doing this thing at the behest of Western imperialist powers.
Yes.
We need to really get some kind of a curriculum that instill self-pride and patriotism into our people before we can come up with leaders like Nkrumah. Else, it's going to be the same music every day, man. Ain't going to change.
Ed, do you believe that?
Oh, yeah, I believe that, but I think I would disagree with the question of being leadership. Okay. I think leadership is at the center of it. And I agree that were my buddies. The guys who were Legon and communist guys were my classmates. 1974, 74, 72 to 75 group. That group was, I don't name them here, but those were the guys who joined the revolution. And when we were Legon, we were Luta people. When we joined the revolution in government, it became all capitalists all over the place. Anyway, those were my classmates, my buddies. The issue is we tend to value materialism a lot at the expense of all Africans, at the expense of all other values. I mean, we are kind of people who would rather be seen in a Mercedes while your kids are in bad schools and there's no toilet in your neighborhood, but we'd rather be seeing the Mercedes. We like to have a Louis Vuitton bag with $2 in it, while the Chinese would like to have a paper bag with $1 million in it. So that's where our mindset is. So the leaders don't provide incentives for people to follow. But the main problem is, against and the nonsense, is the educational system. When the Chinese were buying books, they were not buying these Russian books to go and read in Russian and then do what Russians do per se. They were going to modify them to suit the Chinese value. So they were going to rewrite them to suit the Chinese needs. Okay? Dick Gregory said one thing. Said George Washington didn't throw away the British so that he will build the British kind of education here. George Washington threw the British to liberate America so he can create his own school system. So one thing that is different from American educational system in England, because I teach in both Europe and here, is that you find out that our state school system, the community colleges, the state universities, they permeate everywhere. From every state, they have a university, technical university that dedicated to rebuilding that state. And they may not know philosophy the way Harvard teaches philosophy, but they don't care. They were set up as mechanized universities to rebuild a new state after the Civil War. We did not have a liberation education that liberated our minds so that we can build our own schools, train our own people in what we want them to know. The books are British and French, everything. So we train home for them. When we come here, we perform very well because, like Nana knows that. You come to graduate school here, I came to graduate school straight. Everything's so easy for you. It doesn't matter where it is, from Ames to University of Chicago. You just walk through. Everything is cool for you because you are pretty much overtrained in the mathematics or whatever it is at Legon and all those were solid. But when I come home, what do? I had a teacher in high school, Kofodia, Opekumi. He was from Pokowari. Then he went to Europe and did his master's and PhD in nuclear physics. He came back to Ghana, and then he went back again. I was in high school. And I said, man, why don't you stay? He said, well, the first job was managing radar at the Kotoka Airport, Accra Airport. What is that? So we are actually pretty much useless at home. But I believe in the youth now. I believe that the youth really, to the extent that they are ignoring government and being innovative, because in this information technology age, that is the age for the African to leapfrog the development process. Because what it takes is very easy. Computers, smartphone, and very good logic, which we have. And then building your own system to satisfy your needs. So when I saw, when I went to Italy and I saw Uber, like Florence, they have their own Uber system. I came to Accra and Uber was there, and I thought that Uber was the same Uber in San Francisco. I'm glad now that I think the Uber, they have written their own app now.
Yes, it's called Bolt.
Good. This. We have so many needs because technology is to satisfy your needs. Define your needs, and the technology will follow it. Otherwise, you'll be following Western technology because your needs are Western.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So Nana, Ed opposes the idea that these problems we cannot lay these problems we're discussing when it comes to Africa at the feet of leaders, and I think that I agree. And a lot of people talk about this, talk about how we've had bad leaders, corrupt and greedy leaders who have not changed the course for us, because we know that the framers of this country that we all live in had a vision for this country. And so everything comes to leadership. But if you want to respond to that,
this leadership is a cop-out.
Yeah, in a second. I just want to give shout outs to folks who have joined us online. This is the Progressive Mind Show. Today we're talking about Africa's ally. Should it be Russia, China, or the United States? And if you just join us, my honorable guest, Emeritus Professor Edward Mensah, is here. and I have Nanaya Afrifa. He's also here helping with the discussion. You may have heard, for those who are not from Ghana specifically, you may have heard names like Kwame Nkrumah, Legon. Kwame Nkrumah is basically, for those who don't know, is the founding father of the nation Ghana. He's also the founding father of what we now have as AU. He started the Organization of African Unity, OAU, which was designed or created to bring the African countries together so we can have one economy, one army, one government. But of course, that legacy is on. We see it through AU now. We don't know how successful AU will take that vision, but that's where we are as Africans. These conversations need to go on with the next generation, the youth, the millennials now. Would they change the narrative of Africa so that we don't necessarily have to depend on Western powers or China or anybody else, but do for ourselves what needs to be done? And then in a little while, we're going to go into what can Africa do so that we don't necessarily have to think of allies and pave our own future for the next generation. Before that, we would take a few comments that has come through. MF Efa Ameya says, our leaders have simply failed in establishing things that really build a nation. We should go back to what Kwame Nkrumah and Champon put together. We have the Africa Continental Free Trade, and what else do we need? We either have to plan with real indices and be realistic, or else we will be doomed forever. We are doomed forever. This is Efa. Thank you so much, Efa. We will come back. I think there's a great point that I would like Efa. I would like Nanaya Afrifa to chime on. Good day, Alinko and the panel. Thank you for that. We have all that it takes to succeed, and I will get the right. And when we get the right leadership, I'm sure is what he's trying to say, we won't be able to be a player in global affairs. And okay, so thank you again, Amefa. Okay, he meant to say, he corrected himself. I wanted to say until we get the right leadership. Thank you so much for the correction. Gail Fraser says, it's never good for outsiders and interlopers to be in Africa, the richest continent on the planet, period. Thank you. This is from Jeanette E. Hutchison, listening to. Thank you for chiming in, Jeanette. From my own brother, my own friend, old school friend, Big Daddy. I was trying to remember the nickname. Big Daddy K-Mesa says, Prof is on point. Even if we know the value of our resources, will it wipe out the greed? So, Nana, a lot of comments are pointing to greed leadership, right? Please go ahead with your comments earlier.
Well, that's a simplistic way to look at it. Everyone is greedy. Capitalism is all about greed. So people are even greedier here in America than they are in Africa, where people, Wall Street just make sure people get bankrupted. People lose their life savings. That's what capitalism is. But let's come back to the leadership.
But Nana, a little bit. Even though people are losing their capital, whatever, like the example you just gave, right? Isn't America economically better off when it comes to a lot of African countries? Which is why we come here.
Well, America is an empire. The dollar is. You can't compare that. But what I'm trying to say, we don't even want to compare Africa and Africa, because America is Europe, an extension of Europe. Okay. And Europe, how Europe built its wealth. I mean, we can come back. No African country had the benefit of people, enslaved Africans working for them. I mean, to build their country. Okay. So you cannot compare these things. And then the point is, if America wants something and he can get it legitimately, he uses force. We can do that, right? Now, this whole idea about leadership, and I think people are misunderstanding it. There's always, once you focus on one person or a group of people, right, leading the masses to development heights, right? Then when they are eliminated, we've had that with Lumumba, we've had that with Nkrumah, right? Okay. It's so easy to eliminate them and stunt the progress of the country. The other problem is our leaders, our Ghanaian leaders don't come from Mars. Are they from Jupiter? Are they not? Don't they go to the same high schools, the same missionary schools that we all went to?
Yeah.
So definitely the same inculcation, right? Devious inculcation is going to bring out the worst out of them. Yes, once in a while you might have Nkrumah, you might have a Rollins, you might have somebody, right? But eventually most of them sell out because most of them come from the same paradigm that, you know what, we have to choose sides, we have to depend on the West to develop, or, you know, they come for their own benefit, their own personal benefit, right? Well, if I cut a deal well, my family will be good. Maybe we throw a little bit crumbs to the country and, you know, I'll be set the rest of my life. Look at the other countries. You see, go back to the Chinese. The Chinese were poorer than we were.
Didn't they have good leadership though?
They did have good Mao. Yes, they talk about Mao. Do you know what? Mao used to take a train and go to Stalin. And Stalin will have him wait because he needed loans. And Mao realized that, you know what? Anytime you go to somebody for a loan, well, that person is going to control you or is going to, in a way, humiliate you. So they came and they worked very hard, right, to build the structure of their development, their industrial development. Now, listen to what the Chinese did to the West. When the West wanted to take advantage of Chinese, cheap, skilled Chinese labor, you know what the Chinese told them? He said, okay, you want to take advantage of our skilled, cheap labor? Okay, good. But you have to share your technology with us. You understand? So you share your technology because the West won't share their technology with you. The patents and everything, they will not share their technology with you. So the point is, we need to come out of this stuff about leadership and we don't need anybody. You need people.
Now, before you continue, you mentioned Mao. For the benefit of those who may not know, can you, who is Mao just in connection with China? That's
so Mao is a Chinese leader that came out of the Second World War. Right?
Okay, great.
Because you know China was dominated by the British and the Japanese.
Okay,
right.
Great.
He was a communist leader, right?
Great, right.
Okay.
But you said Mao. Okay, so he was a leader that charted a cause for his people. You also said that when the Americans want to, you know, work or trade with Chinese, there was a negotiation. Okay, you want our cheap labor? Share with us. Now, the people of China didn't come up with the strategy. There were leaders that set the pace, right? That negotiated on behalf of their people, no?
Well, but listen, the leaders could have done the deal, and the people, if the people went aligned with the leaders, they wouldn't have worked hard.
Yes.
The Chinese worked hard to achieve where they are. Now let's go back to this. Let's go back to, you know, of the railway that China built, the first Chinese development project in Africa.
Okay.
The Transalat is between Zambia and Tanzania.
Okay.
That was the first. That was a 1,000 kilometers railway. It cost China was so poor, but it cost them $3 billion to build it. You know why? Zambia went to the IMF and World Bank, to the West, that because of they were the apartheid in the frontline states. The apartheid when South Africa was, Zimbabwe. Yeah. They didn't have access to the sea to ship their copper. And the South Africans wouldn't let them do it because they were supporting the freedom fighters.
Okay.
So they went to the World Bank that, look, help us so we could build a railway so at least we could ship our exports to Tanzania, to the coast, and ship it. The West turned them down. They went to the Chinese. Some of the people said, oh, China couldn't afford it. But you see how Mao and his leadership, Xu and Lai, who are all very good friends of Nkrumah, you see what the calculation they did?
Yeah.
Mao calculated that Africa had a lot of votes at the United Nations General Assembly. And Mao didn't trust his fellow Asians. He trusted the Africans. So the Chinese did it, knowing very well it will pay off, not in terms of resources, but when it came to a point for China to be readmitted to the United Nations, was it not Africans who voted for China?
Yeah, your point is going back to good leadership, and that's what we're trying to say.
Good leadership doesn't mean one person. You see, we talk about good leadership, but you see, when Mao picked up China, he changed the thinking of the society.
So the people
Castro did the same thing.
Okay.
We can't have leaders who are great, but at the same time, you have people who are reactionary. The same reactionary people will get rid of the leaders because they can easily be bribed.
Well, okay, Ed.
Yeah, you see, I will agree with some of his points, but the leadership point, I hold on to it. You see, people take directions from examples set by the people who are ruling them.
Yes.
They look at what you do. Look at your village. Are you hiding Mercedes in your village while you tell me to ride a bicycle? Did you send your children to Oxford while you're telling me to study in tree and away so that I don't study in English? They watch you, and people are brilliant. So they want to see that you are honest. They like to take instruction from you. Kwame Nkrumah was honest. Kwame Nkrumah, matter of fact, didn't have a house. We all know that. He didn't have a house because he didn't need it. Pedwasi Lodge was built by some of the supporters for him. He gave it to the state. He didn't want to be seen as his house. It was his house, but he gave it to the state. Nkrumah didn't have that. Jerry almost wanted to be like that, but again, our buddies who came with him to be the socialist agitators pushed him the other way. That's a different story.
You're talking about Jerry Rawlings, who was also an ex-president of Ghana. Okay.
He wanted to move a little bit. He had a structure to move that way, but he was derailed by so many quasi-socialists who came around and derailed him around. If you take a look at Singapore, the Singapore guy and Kwame Nkrumah left Europe, England together around the same time to their countries for independence.
There you go.
They were poorer than anything you can talk about. It's an island. There's nothing there, just a sun and a sea.
Yeah.
But when the leader came around, he said, basically, he wants honest people. And he was a very honest person. He wants honest people who will work on behalf of this country. And if you are a technocrat and you show incompetence a couple of times, you are dismissed immediately.
Right.
For everybody to see that I am saying what I want to say as your boss, as your leader, as your CEO, and my team. Because if your team, it's strange. If the people who are in front of you, it's like your house. My father is my leader. My father was my leader. You okay?
Yeah.
If my uncles, I trusted all of them. They want me to behave like them. But if I found that my uncle was cheating with another woman and that, or my father was drinking secretly or messing up other people's contracts, I will not listen to what you say anymore. If you tell me to do A, I will do something else.
Yes.
So we need to come and build a leadership that is selfless, that will not be self-centered and just greed, because like you said, capitalism is greed. When I came to this country in economics, one of the papers I remember so far, and I still quote it all the time, is titled Capitalism and the Optimum Degree of Fraud. That is, what is the level of fraud that capitalism will accept and still progress? So they didn't rule out capitalism. There's fraud. But what are we going to do to minimize the fraudulent part so that we can be very productive? But the human being is not perfect. The human beings like to cut corners. They like to do stuff. That's why we have rules and laws to throw you to jail or whatever.
Right.
In our place, we seem to have learned simply the bad part of the greed, the bad incentives that greed gives you. And the motivational incentives, we haven't learned that.
So you are saying that because Singapore had a good leader and sustained that good leadership with probably a good succession plan, Singapore has taken over, has developed way past Ghana now.
Yeah,
I don't buy that model because look, Singapore is not Africa.
No, but do you believe that Singapore is far developed than Ghana right now?
How many slaves were taken out of Singapore?
Well, no, but
the British had Singapore was a port. It was a business port already. You're talking about a country that's 1 million or something people, a country that aligned with Western capitalism. Okay. You might as well say, what about the Soviet Union? The Soviet Union never colonized any country in Africa. It from 1917 to 1945 became a world power by sheer grit. That's the same thing the Chinese did. But you see, when we talk about leadership, we tend to focus so much on one person. No, that's not how it works. The superstructure.
Don't do one person. Go with the structure. Look,
when I said this, you read Ayi Kwame's book, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Your Born.
Yeah.
When Ayikwema wrote this book, they thought the CIA had him write it, right? We had this great guy in Nkrumah, but behind Nkrumah, who were the people there? They were sabotaging him.
But I think that you and Ed are saying the same thing, because I don't think Ed is talking about leadership in solitude. Like, but you know, of course, leadership with structure.
No, the institution that you put in place, the institution. In fact, the best leadership. I'm not a Christian now. I used to be, but you can say that the Christians had a message that is the best marketed message that any idea could have had. They had Jesus as a leader. But when he died, there were 12 apostles behaving like him. All of a sudden, there were 12 Jesuses all over the place. One person dying didn't make a difference. The whole thing took off straight because there were replacements with the same idea or the same page who knew the direction of the movement, where they want to go. Like the Nana is saying, the idea of leadership as one person, that's a wrong model. That model, when that person is gotten rid of, you're gone. Period. Right. It's a leadership ideas that will be inculcated in a group of people sold through their educational system. You know, we had independence, and everything we need to develop came from our colonizers,
right?
From our clothes, our shoes, our food, whatever. There was a guy who came to my house last week, and we talked about. I said the Fantis are really the Fantis taste. We Ghana, you know how we say that we are all the Fantis taste is so British, and we import so much to satisfy the taste of the elites. We
like fried eggs and drink tea.
Yeah, and he told me that his grandmother today will not eat the bread with the butter if the butter is not plantains butter from England.
It has to be plantains butter from England.
I don't know if you guys know what the plantains was.
I remember plantains. I remember plantains, Ed.
So today, Nigeria has rice mountains, hills that they're self-sufficient in rice completely. When I was in Ibadan, I schooled in Ibadan, Nigeria imported close to $200 million of rice in those days, 1975 to 77. Now they're completely self-sufficient, although the WTO tried to force them to rely on the Western rice through the WTO architecture. No, you know the person who taught Nigeria the agricultural system that will make himself sufficient in rice. It's a Ghanaian guy. He was a guy Kufuor appointed as one of his agricultural officers. But when the guy took his model to subsequent governments, they didn't listen to him. They want Nigeria. We have what it takes to work together to pretty much be self-sufficient in what we need to survive, as long as we don't define our needs in terms of plantains butter.
Okay.
Now, that is what's killing us.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Yeah. No, thank you all for sharing. Ed and Nanaya Efrifa, it is 15 minutes past 7 p.m. We're talking about Africa's allies. Should it be China, Russia, or the U.S.? And in the next maybe 15 minutes, we'll try and wrap up the conversation. If you want to call and ask a question or just contribute to the show, the number to do so with is 815-277-5047. 815-277-5047. This is the Progressive Mind Show, and we're talking to Ed and Nanaya Efrifa, who are all Ghanaians residing, Ghanaian Americans. And so some of the examples, a lot of the examples are coming from Ghana, but in general, these concepts and some of the things we're talking about cuts across Africa. And so if you heard the name mentioned, Legon is a university, the first university that was built in Ghana by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I don't know if that's accurate, Ed. Was that the first university or the biggest university?
It's the first university because the British wanted to build Ibadan for British West Africa. We had a Furabe College in Sierra Leone, was the first British university in West Africa, but they wanted to build Ibadan for both Ghana and Nigeria. But somehow the politicians didn't like the idea, so Legon and Ibadan were building the same year. But in Ghana, it's the first premier university. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarification. We have Aton Namgo Ka is watching, and then Mr. Kendi just also joined us. Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen, those who have just joined us. Again, feel free to contribute to the show or ask a question, 815-277-5047. Which of these countries, per history over the years, would you say have contributed or supported a lot of the African countries most? Would it be China? No, would it be China, Russia, or the U.S.?
Well, I don't even think, honestly, it doesn't really matter. The point is, though, the West, the whole world economy is run by the West, right? Whether the Chinese, the Russians, they all somewhat have to subscribe to this Western domination. Okay? Right? The point, though, is in our relationship with countries, right? Like Mandela says, we shouldn't make that mistake that the enemies of some people should be our enemies because they want them to be our enemies.
Okay.
You understand? If you look at Africa very well, post-independence, most of our people were trained in the Eastern Europe. Our doctors, you go to Ghana, most of them were trained in Eastern Europe. Okay?
Yeah.
Because the Soviets had this ideological, they believe in solidarity. You can share resources with people because they believe in this ideal of communism, right? Whether good or bad. But I don't really think we really need to approach our development by aligning ourselves with particular geopolitical force. The problem is, it is the West that likes to force us to abide by their trajectory. So if they don't like Russia or China, they want you not to also like Russia or China. And we should resist that.
Okay. So Africa, so from what we've discussed this evening, from your perspectives, Africa should not necessarily be working or looking towards forming alliance with any of the international bodies, but look to our own future. And how do we do that, Ed? We see ECOWAS falling apart. It has not really.
ECOWAS is a mess. It's a mess now. You can see.
How about AU?
AU is another mess too. These people had the right and the right direction to basically do better than they are doing now. See, like I said, we should not particularly define one group as that group becomes our ally. Otherwise, you end up inheriting the enemies, and they want you to inherit the enemies, which is a very bad idea. We can come together and then approach whatever group there is, if we are negotiating, from positions of strength, because we know what we want. We have intelligent people now who can lead negotiations if they can only listen to consensus before they start. Now, when they go to negotiate, they don't even want to listen to the experts they have created, their own experts they've created. I remember we formed a group, an informal group in the US here, where we were going to put a bunch of economists together. And anytime we are going to negotiate stuff, Ghanaians are coming here, just put the question to us. We'll try to get you some bullet talking points of the frontier of knowledge in that field. We have it. Our classmates are here. Our students are the guys you're going to negotiate with. We charge nothing, zero. There were no takers. Now, nobody wanted that. So they go and just negotiate as if they know what they're talking about, and then we have royalties of 3%, 10% at most on our natural resources, like we have on our lithium now. and the 10 is supposed to be the best. We should not align ourselves with any particular group. We are matured now. And the West, I tell you, and I said, they are really they want us to be with them by force. They need us. The development structure depends upon our resources. The Russians have too many resources. Chinese have money to buy from anywhere. The West needs us. We know they need us. Therefore, when we sit to talk to them, first thing is that, hey, you guys, we know you know that we are not like the kind of lazy thinkers you used to negotiate with, right? So we don't want this, we don't want that. This is what we want. Otherwise, we'll go with China, we go with Russia. We play them not particularly to one against the other, but we are trying to optimize our interests.
There you go.
But taking one side and that side, you basically inherit enemies. And we don't want to do that. In the next frontier of development, we don't want to do that.
Okay, we don't want to do that. We don't want to inherit enemies. Nanea, what apart from and then I know you've shared the same sentiment as Ed just shared. So apart from that, what should African countries be looking at, strategizing, so we can actually create our own economy where we're not overly looking towards another country to protect us or to help us grow and whatnot. Now, putting in perspective the conversation we just had about leadership.
So, this is someone gave an analogy, right?
Okay.
I know we do have experts who know what we need to negotiate for. But look, this is a jungle world where some people think they are the lion and they rule. Someone, and I don't want to mention which country the person comes from. He used to be a vice president of a country. He says when you negotiate with some of these Western countries, have you ever negotiated with the mafia before? No. They come with a big gun on the table. You know what I mean? So when he comes, he put a big gun to tell you that you're going to cede to me. You're going to give me everything I want, and I'm going to decide what you get. So the way to get around this is to negotiate in unison. Like, let's say the subunit, Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast. If we're all thinking the same, seeing our interest as the same, when we are collectively negotiating, then we tend to have some more leverage because you can't use one against another. Because if Ghana goes to negotiate, right, maybe on cocoa, well, Ivory Coast got cocoa too. They can go behind the back and get the same thing from Ivory Coast.
Right.
So this all goes back to what Nkrumah was agitating, right? That we need to come together. Without continental African unity, we are dead, pretty much. And Nyerere later accepted Nkrumah's premise that because listen, Nyerere didn't side with Nkrumah initially.
Nyerere, former Tanzanian president.
This is the thing. But then later in his life, he said anytime he traveled outside Africa, they would ask him, hey, what's going on in Nigeria? And he says, I'm not the president of Nigeria. Why are you asking me about Nigeria? But later he thought about it and realized that the rest of the world sees us as one, even though we don't see ourselves as one.
That's
we
a powerful
come
point.
together
Yes.
and negotiate together. Else, we are not going to win.
Is that coming together possible? Is it looking like that can happen? Looking at what
I don't think so. I don't think it will be possible when the youth we have now and the youth that will emerge from them somewhere there. But with my type of folks, my age mates and my seniors, and I think we are done. We are realistic. We are done. We have now trained the youth, train our kids in the ideals of Nkrumah, the ideals of Lumumba, the ideals of Nyerere. We have to bring those things and tell them we used to have leaders who actually knew what was good for Africa and then brought their people along with them. So that we stop this petty greed and competition. And so Togo will negotiate that, Benin will do that. It doesn't work that way. You know, like I said, we go together in force and then we negotiate.
work together and negotiate, removing the barriers. Just like Kay Mensa says, Africans need to remove the borders and trade amongst ourselves and share common goals. I think we can start from there, removing all this visa-free. Removing the visa restrictions or visa requirements that Africans need to go to other African countries.
I think the first thing we need to do, the Chinese have a saying that for you to build well, build roads. We need to link Africa with trains, with railways. I don't care. Look, the Chinese will do it. If we go collectively, they can do it. They have the resources, the capabilities. That's something we can give them as much resources, because once we can connect Africa, you can come from Ghana to South Africa by road or whatever, like we have in America here. Then we can come together, right? Okay. The other thing too, and this is the thing, you remember when Gaddafi was overthrown, he was killed.
Yeah.
In Zimbabwe, they asked the Chinese foreign minister, I think one of the Chinese ministers, that why did they in China veto the no-fly zone? You know what the Chinese told them? The Chinese told them that, look, we only deal with Africa collectively. You had African countries who were voting for the new, were in favor of it. So Africa itself was divided. So that's why we just didn't vote that way. Because you even didn't come up with a united front, and the Chinese policy is to deal with Africa collectively. So if the whole of Africa takes one position, China will go with it.
Right.
But we don't do it. I mean, look at this Palestine issue. You have other countries supporting. I mean, what's going on? I mean, how in God's sense, even the one of the justices who comes from Uganda voted, and the Uganda people were embarrassed. They said they disown her. This is the kind of nonsense we have in our continent. People take peanuts and they sell you out.
They said that, yes. The current, again, so you see, it comes to the leaders. Nana, people take peanuts. Our leaders go and take peanuts and they sell us out.
Well, you trust me, the guy on the streets, if you give him that peanuts, he will do the same. Because of our thinking. We don't think country first.
Nana, the leader has taken peanuts. So what would a small boy do? The small boy will go for peanuts too.
Look, let me tell you. Most Americans won't sell their country out.
Because their leaders,
most Chinese won't sell their country out.
Because most American leaders have not sold America out.
They have institutions that inculcate positive propaganda that makes them patriotic.
Yes.
We Ghanaians one, the only time we're patriotic is when the Black Stars lose. And even that one, we are not even united.
Right. So I think that we need those.
There are no Black Stars. There are no Black Stars yet. Black Stars gonna call them Ghana 11 until you have to earn the title Black Stars. Please don't call them Black Stars.
Somebody says, I thought Ghana is a non-alliance country.
Oh, that non-alliance stuff. No, because Ghana is going to go to IMF. You know, IMF is run by the West, and they will tell you, hey, you want the money? Well, you got to jump this way for me before you get the money. And if you mess up your economy and you think that's the only lifeblood you have, you won't have any choice but to embarrass yourself.
Right. So we've done an hour and a half conversation about this matter. The way forward looks like, from what our analysts and experts have said, is preparing the next generation to have an African identity, to believe in Africa, and to do for Africa what it needs. And so we can see that, and I'll take this opportunity you can see that in Ed, your own son, Vic Mensa, what he's doing for Ghana and Africa now. Literally putting up this concert, the Black Star Line concert that him and Chance the Rapper put up in Ghana. With the goal. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, so we need the youth. We need young people doing things like that. That Black Star Line concert basically brought a lot of African youth together. I think that we have a caller on the line. We had a lot of youth attending that concert. It wasn't just for the concert of the party, but there was a message that African youth need to come together, knowing that we all have one heritage and we share a common future. Are you calling to the show, sir? Okay. You may want to ring 815-277-5047. Okay. All right. So I think that we need to work on our system here. But please go ahead with your question. Hopefully we can hear you because it's on my phone now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Ifam. When it comes to leadership, right? Everything we do in this world comes from an idea, and then you get the support. So it must necessarily come from somebody. Mr. Doctor, I don't know how to address him, but Nanaya, right?
Oh, Nanaya, free for yes.
He seems to think that there is some kind of a superior institution that can overcome the African problem. It has to be a person. It has to be a group. But there is, even if it is a group, there has to be somebody leading the group. We can't go to a negotiation and then we go to 4 different ideas. What we need to realize is that we have various institutions and we put head. We have the president, we have the ministers, we have all that. These people are coming on board to make sure the institution runs. And that is what we need. We cannot have, when Obama said we need strong institutions, yes, it's true. But the institutions ought to be run by human beings.
Yeah.
So we need people who will come and change the status quo so that we can produce to manufacture and be able to feed ourselves. Anything short of that, some kind of something, some miracle is going to come from somewhere, won't happen. So we need a leader, we need somebody who leads. We need people who buy into that person's idea. We need continuity of that. You see, look, one thing Africa should also realize is that irrespective of how you want to progress, because someone else needs your resources, so they're also working against you. So we have a very Herculean task. And I'm afraid the way we are going about it, we either have a long way to go or we never get there.
Thank you so much, Efa. Nanea.
Yeah, but I still think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to say. You don't need one person to lead you anywhere. The point is, we come from a colonial system. The system, they talk about the institutions. Obama talk about what institutions. Obama was looking at our institutions, Western institutions, that they can use to exploit us. The institutions that we have, let me tell you something. You see, the current political system we have in Africa, it's not really, doesn't serve us well. And you know why? Because you're using Western political systems. And in the West here, they are individuals. They know how to compete as individuals. In our culture, we don't compete as individuals. So when you bring a system where we start to compete as individuals, then you have corruption, because you know what? That individual is going to think about his family, right? He's going to think about his town. In the West, they can compete healthfully as individuals. So this whole Western system of competition of ideas, it's not what you need. You see, the Chinese don't do that, right? And you see why they are ahead of the West right now, because they realize that is going to divide their society. So once you're able to develop,
what do the Chinese do? What's their strategy?
Don't you see they have one political party?
Okay.
They just, it's a commandeering economy. The government, the Chinese Communist Party, they decide what kind of development we need.
Do you think that Africa must move away from the current democracy that is being practiced? And because you seem to be ascribed to China's method.
No, because it's not worked. Come on, Alinko. We've been practicing this thing for a very long time. It's not working.
Yeah, let
me finish quick. It's not working
for Africa.
Yeah, it's not working for Africa. And you and I know, based on our culture, we engage collectively.
It's your tribe.
That's why we have all this tribe stuff, because we are competing.
Right, we had the monarch system before the introduction of democracy, right?
Well, even among the monarch system, you have the family system, everything we do it collectively. We farm collectively. But right now, you have a system where, look in Ghana, we have 2 major parties, NDC, MPP. They can't even agree on anything because everyone thinks they have the better solution.
But you have
get a country.
But you have that in the US. You always have 2 opposing.
But you see, they are individuals. In this country, they are brought up to be individuals.
Okay.
Right? You get as much as we are not brought up to be individuals.
You can't compare to the United States and the Western model. Nana is right. We are putting a square peg in a round hole, or the other way around. Like I said earlier, the books we read. IMF and the World Bank and the economic organizations, WTO, World Trade Organization, that run the world trade, and interstate relationships are all based upon these economic textbooks written in the West based on competition, on market competition. I've read that from the schools. I just retired from that. I can quote from whatever it is, and I keep telling my friends when I go to Ghana is the number one thing is that they ask me, Kwaku, why aren't you here to help us do this at the Bank of Ghana, blah, 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 blah. And I said, when you give Jesus Christ a chance to train in United States, just to blaspheme, but just joking, that Jesus Christ person with American and British economic model, American economic textbooks that I read, centered on competition and rational behavior by which that rationality is misdefined. If you bring it to Ghana, Nigeria, whatever, and apply it, you'll be getting results that fit the Western model, that don't fit the African model. Gotcha. That is, even when you make money from your trade, there's nothing there showing you how to distribute that wealth so that villages get things that lead to well-being, good latrine, good schools, good water. There's nothing like that. You take all, you share it among your guys, and you pay yourself a lot of money, and you have mansions, and you demonstrate a behavior that is typical of living in Beverly Hills or Gold Coast of Chicago, Lakefront. That kind of behavior is what we value. We don't value the translation of growth into well-being, which makes you an African, which makes you taking care of the community. There's nothing wrong with actually, the model is good, but the model will lead you to creating wealth. And when you do create that wealth, the process leaves so many people out of it. It's through the translation of the growth to well-being, which is the new frontier of economics that many countries are teaching now, even in the West. We're doing that now. The determinants of translating growth into well-being. Other than that, you will have the chaos in Brexit. Brexit was particularly the lack of translation of growth into well-being. I don't want to claim that I know the solution, but I'll tell you what, not all the people who voted for Trump are racist. A big part of this country, the Appalachians, the ghettos, the poor rural areas, have been left out completely. And the model has been successful in achieving what is achieved in Europe, in America, but in that model, there's no part that tells you how to distribute the growth into well-being properly. In Africa at all, we left it out. So once you keep doing that, you're leaving the people behind. It doesn't matter who's ruling. Those books, those models, those methodologies are not African. Look, when you vote, and the guy gets 51% of the vote, and he takes 100% of the power. Which African village did that? Where you have 100% of the power, but you have only 51% of the vote of the villages. It doesn't work like that. So it's wrong. The Western model, like Nana said, is wrong for us. It has been wrong for us. And as long as we think we can develop into the future by following the same model, we are not going anywhere.
So democracy is not good for Africa, Ed.
What do you mean by democracy, though? I mean, Western democracy is a democracy.
Western democracy, where we have the kind of political system that we have now. We vote for certain leaders. We go through an electoral process to elect leaders.
Yeah, where they need $1 billion to convince you to vote for them, right?
Right. I mean, all of that. Right, all of that.
Nah.
No.
If people need $1 billion to run an election to convince you to vote for you, it's not a good system.
Not necessarily the amount of money to run a political system or a campaign run to win power, but I think that the philosophy that Africans need, based off the system that we had before the introduction of what we now call democracy. I think that we cannot do that. Is that you're saying we cannot?
We had our own way of building consensus before the white man came.
Yeah, we can. we can transform this into consensus. In fact, the voting is not what we have now. It is the laziest form of voting. In the same way, in America here, there are some states and counties that have proportional voting. You know that three people you're going to vote for three candidates. You're given 3 votes. If you love one person more than the other 2, you give that person all the 3. But if I love Nanayao and I love you and I love Guy, I split the vote among you so that you can have everybody expressing preferences through the voting system. And what comes out is not one idea, 51%, one idea, no. And in such systems, you have a parliament that forms a coalition. All the time a coalition government, because you can't have one person having it. We can make ours. We can into that kind of system. But the idea that 51 to 100% of the power, 49-0 for the next 4 years. I used to have a theory, which is not too good, but I would say it here. A necessary condition for violence in Africa is to have an election. After the election, the election is a condition for the next stage of violence. Because you know that you got 49%, but you are going to get 0% of the resources distributed to you for the next 4 years. Why should I go to sleep?
But that's a Western system.
Yeah. Why should I go to sleep?
So what models should we adopt?
Look, I'm not really, Alinko, I'm not really interested in models. I'm more interested in deliverables. And I always go back to the Chinese. The Chinese raised 800 million people, 800 million people out of poverty. They didn't colonize one country. They didn't bomb one country, right? They didn't.
But Daniel, you cannot have a deliverable without, let's say, an ideology.
What I'm trying to tell you is, you see, do they practice Western style democracy?
Well, they don't. So which one? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
no, they have their own system.
This is what
they don't want us to copy their system.
They have their own system. You cannot be a Chinese leader by saying that, oh, I have $1 million, I have $1 billion, or I have a PhD, or my brother, my father was this. You cannot be that. Anybody in the Chinese rulership has
public office
proven himself or herself to be a leader in a village somewhere, from there to the district, from the district to the county, from the county. It's a process where you've been tested through. Yes. So when you join that group, you know how to manage society.
And then when you join that group too, you know how to get rid of enemies too. So what I'm trying to tell you, the point is, this democracy stuff is a farce. It's not going to make us develop, because you know what? We expend more time fighting amongst ourselves than unifying ourselves. Look,
it's not good. It's not good.
There are some things that are basic we are not doing in Africa. Look at a country like Congo. You know the resources of the Congo combined is more than the economy of the United States and Great Britain put together.
Right.
So but Congo doesn't even have a major network of road connecting the east, where their resources are, right, to the most of the country, right?
Yeah, and it has to do with leadership.
Why couldn't Ghana and Nigeria, we have a highway or a train connecting us? Do you know how much trade is going to be engendered?
It would take leaders with that kind of vision to make
No. It's only the leaders don't want to do that, because some people are bribing these people not to put it into practice, because some people lose.
Right.
You need the masses. You need the masses to push.
How can the masses decide to build bridges when the leaders are?
Well, you're a leader. You have an air, and you're telling the masses what to do. We don't need a political leader to tell you something.
So
Bob Marley, was he a leader? Was Bob Marley a leader of a country? But he was putting messages in his language, in his songs. That's what kind of galvanized people to action.
Yeah.
People read books and galvanize. Teachers can be leaders in the classroom. You don't need a political leader. People just there for themselves.
You know how we're putting it. I maintain that whatever is leading the process, whatever group of people and ideas they have leading the process, I call them leaders. I don't want them to be corrupt. I don't want them to be doing something else and tell me, listening to them, you do this because I say so. Because I say so is the last thing Kwaku Mensah wants to listen to. I rebel immediately, you know. So when in fact, our country, our leaders have a credibility problem. Chicago here, we had a guy, Professor, Nobel laureate professor called Robert Lucas. He had a theory, Lucas credibility theory. The credibility theorem says that leaders can put together a particular macroeconomic policy. They can put together a particular idea that they want to implement. But if they haven't shown themselves that they follow through, if they do otherwise, to the contrary of the purpose of what they want to do, people behave in such a way as to negate the intended consequence. You don't have a credibility. So you say A, people do C, because you can be trusted. And that credibility theorem runs through so many things.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I think it's 7:47 p.m. Central. And we wanted to end this show about maybe 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. But we thank you all for indulging with us till now and contributing. For those who were not able to ring in, I think that we had a bit of a glitch here. And so some were trying to reach the studio line, but it came through my phone. I saw some of the calls, but I couldn't pick because I didn't want to interrupt the live show. However, we would like to get our guests to give us their closing remarks. This is a huge subject, and it's not going to take 2 hours for us to divulge or completely comprehensively deal with it. But we hope that we've sparked something in you at home, in whatever, in your locations, and I think that one thing I've taken a lot from this conversation. But one key thing is we are all leaders. Wherever you are, you will lead, especially the young people, millennials, Generation Z, of African descent, both in the diaspora and on the continent. Africa needs you. Africa needs your leadership. So I would go to Nana first to give us your closing remarks regarding this subject. Should Africa have an ally? If not, what should we be doing? Please go ahead.
We should have allies. We should have allies just the same way you have friends, right? There are times you call upon friends in the time of need, right? But we need to have alliances in the geopolitical sphere based on mutual respect, right? Non-interference in each other's realm, right? And then not necessarily so much of our interest. I'm not too much into the selfish stuff. That the only way, we relate to other people is what we can get out of it. That's Western mentality, okay? A lot of countries don't operate that. You can operate with people who share the same solidarity, where they are in solidarity with you. Some people come to your aid because they think you shouldn't be living the way you're living, and we can help, right? At the same time, there are some things we can fundamentally do for ourselves. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a mass network of roads and railways connecting the continent. This is something we need to focus on. And where we're going to get our help, I don't care, right? Whether from Russia, from North Korea. If somebody comes to say, look, I want something from you, but I can give you this, then we should go for it. Because once we're able to build our infrastructure, then we can bring the whole continent together. We can trade, we can expand markets, right? Then we can get to know each other better, right? In the meantime, we should just stick with the basics.
Now, thank you so much. I just want to pin you to the wall. If you were to be pinned to the wall, like I just said, right, and you say you have one option: China, US, Russia. Choose one for Africa. Which one would you advise an African president to go for?
I'll go with Chinese. They have money. They have a history of not colonizing us. The Chinese were the first people who came to Africa, and if you read the history, the East Africans liked them. They traded and they left. Chinese don't operate the Western way of colonizing people. Now they have money. They have technology. Russia, Russia doesn't need anybody. Russia is an autarkic country. They have everything by themselves. They have limitless energy. Their country is cold. I don't really think we can do without them. In a way, we can also get a lot of help from them in terms of technology too, because I think some of these countries offer technology that are competitive in prices, better than what the Western world gives you, which is a lot, right? So in that way, but at the same time, you know, we should just have friends, right? Some friends might be very good in some situations. Some friends might not be so good in some situations. We don't want to make enemies because we are not in a position to have enemies, right?
All right.
Africans are people of humanity. We love everybody. The same way South Africa went over there and rooted and defended the cause of Palestine. We should be able to do that. What is right is right. Because you see, we don't remember when South Africa was in trouble, the PLO went over there and helped them. Right? This is the way we need to relate with people. We don't relate with people we've had bad history with who still treat us bad, right? And some people think these are the people we're going to get some kind of goodies from. We are not. That doesn't mean, right? We have to not have relationship with them, but we just don't trust them. Deal with them, but don't trust them until they prove themselves that they can be trusted.
Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Nana. Ed, same question to you. And if you had to make a decision, advise an African president, if we ever get one, to go for one country out of the three, which one would you go for?
I will not start from there. I will start this summary by talking about the future, the way in the future, the way we should do things. I think we should rely on the youth, try to get them a better education so that they can value the Africanness and what Africa needs above everything else. We should negotiate together with strength. We shouldn't go individually because we all happen to have the same resources. And so we can't negotiate that much. We also know that's strong. So together, the West needs us so they will see the value of what you have. And then they will come around. Otherwise, we'll go to the next guy. We do that. But if I really have to choose one person, giving me, as Kokuma started say, these three, United States and Europe and what do you call that? China, choose one. I would say that's all you give me? He said, yep. I said, I'm not choosing.
You're not choosing.
I said, I'm not choosing, but I'm going to form a relationship with all of them. Since we all need each other, I'm going to form a relationship with all of them, and whatever we can do together, what support they need from me, that is, legal and that is ethical, I will give that support. But I'm not going to choose you when choosing you means that I'm against the other guy. If choosing you doesn't mean I'm against the other guy, fine, I'll go with you. But if choosing you means that, hey, therefore, you can't vote this way. Therefore, you have to just believe that what I'm doing is right, although it's unethical. I'm not going to do that.
All right.
Hey, let me add a word here.
Yes, go ahead.
The reason you pin me to the Chinese. The Chinese are the only people who lifted 800 million people out of poverty because they were just as poor as us. One. Two, they are the only people who don't interfere in your politics. You know, Ghana, Africa's largest trading partner is China, but it's still Europe that controls Africa politically. Ghana, when we have elections, we go to, you ever hear Ghanaian politicians ever visit the Chinese embassy to solve political problem? They go to the Australian, they go to the UK, they go to the US. That tells you who runs African show. Even though it's the Chinese who are giving the more valuable assistance, right? But you see, they don't do those things. That's not their history. Their history is to do business. Okay, give me this, I give you this. The rest, they still treat us like kids. You know, they come and they even want to impose. They want to impose social norms on us, right? Things that our culture we don't even want.
The Chinese becomes a transactional relationship. Transactional relationship sometimes lacks ethics. I don't care whether you are going to bed with your neighbor's wife, as long as you allow me to build this road and I take that kind of pure transactional.
But Prof, they were with us when apartheid was there. The other people were not.
Oh, I know. I understand.
The Russians.
I understand.
No. They've always proved. They have contracts too. Because
yeah,
when colonialism, when we're fighting, they fought for us. How many poor countries will spend $3 billion for a Tazara railway, right? $3 billion, a poor country.
You're totally right.
Without interest.
They haven't colonized us. They come to us to help. They come to us
they come for mutual trade. Win-win.
To help us in the mutual trade, so that win-win.
They win, right?
But the fact is that they have never colonized us. That you can give them. Another fact is,
do you think that this is the time? This is the time they're going to be. They're preparing us to colonize
anybody.
No,
it's only the Western mind that think they have to colonize somebody. The other societies don't think like that.
Okay. Ed, you were making a point earlier.
I think today the African you have, and the African in Africa, and African in the diaspora, and the global information architecture. Chinese, nobody will allow the kind of colonialism we had in the past to come to Africa again. And then the next guy who tries to colonize Africa will just have another ungovernable place. Because people would never want to live like that. They don't have the right to fight. But
they've colonizers. Some people have colonizers. The West have colonizers. They don't have to put shackles on us. They use the IMF World Bank loans. They come and tell you what to do. Even what to vote, how to vote. Whether to adopt some kind of, if you say, I mean, let's talk about this question about
colonization. That kind of colonialism is there. That kind will not change until we have something like the BRICS. We have something like BRICS that works, that divorces our system from the Euro-American financial architecture, or gives it competition. Unless we have that, then
so economic colonialism is still there. When you see somebody who comes and say, oh, you know what, give me bauxite, I give you $2 billion for roads. Hey, at least that's a good deal. It might not be the best, but at least it's an alternative of development.
Yeah. No, thank you. We have
the transactional thing is not bad. The transactional part is now we are having a railroad from Accra to Tamale. If we could have that. That's transactional. There's nothing wrong with that. We didn't used to have it. We only had it from Takoradi to Koforidua to Boasi to Kumasi. That cycle there. That's what we had. Now,
but bro, listen. If you offer that railway road to the German company to build, they'll build it 100 times the price the Chinese will build.
You can't pay for it. You can't pay for
it. They'll be using Mercedes-Benz trucks. They'll be using Chinese Wonchon trucks. Cheap. And they don't care. They don't care living in the same village and eating the chickens that we have. They want to sleep in an air-conditioned room.
I think another time we can talk about
it, man.
Another time we can talk about mental slavery and how it's caused even some of our leaders, some of the bad leaders, some of the Greeks, some of the greed that we have in our system, not just the leaders, but the people on the continent. How mental slavery due to colonization has damaged us. The effect is had on us to the point where we treat Africa and treat ourselves the way we have been.
Yes,
right. That is the reason why we lack good leadership.
Yes,
we need to go to the roots and let our people begin to have that pride in themselves.
Yes,
pride is a pride in yourself that will lift you up. You know,
absolutely.
We have our leaders. Our leaders sit in the same classroom as some of these Western people and beat them in the classroom.
We'll come. That'll be. This is Black History Month. Hopefully, this coming month, we'll have you guys here again.
That is great. What my son is doing now by linking the youth. Anyway, he goes to the youth. It's the summit. The one he did, he called the summit of the youth, to link them together, because he has been listening to me a lot. They've given up on it. So you guys have messed it up. Let's
we don't even read Sheikh Anta Diop in our universities. We don't read Basil Davidson in our universities. We don't even want to know what true African history is. Everything gotta be cooked and packaged from Britain or France, and then we buy it. Now we don't understand why we can't develop, because we don't have confidence in ourselves.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It's past 8 p.m. and we are very grateful We'll come back. We'll come back. Black History Month. We'll continue this conversation with these two
I'll be
gentlemen.
around. I'll be around. And Nana, let's meet and have some beer sometime. Have we met you before?
Yeah, let's do it. I like to hang out, Prof. Hang out in Chicago and have some beer and talk some more.
Let's have some beer.
I'm available for that. I like to hang out.
Great. That said, this has been the Progressive Mind Show with my guest, Emeritus Professor Edward Mensah, and also Danaya Afrifa, who's a geopolitical analyst. Thank you so much for joining us for this particular episode. Next week on Monday, we're going to do a special, having a conversation about the diaspora. We're going to have Africans, Caribbeans, African Americans, South Americans on the show to talk about our differences as people of the African heritage. How has our relationship been here in the diaspora? It's been sketchy sometimes. So we need to mend. We need to have these conversations so we can better understand ourselves. And yes, Ed, kudos to your son, Vic Mensah, who's doing great in bringing the continent together, especially the youth. And kudos to him, and kudos to you for doing a great job by inspiring him, and instilling in him this great Pan-African values.
Yeah, the future.
Yes, absolutely. To my viewers, thank you so much for being part of the show. We will be here next week, Monday, for a special. It will not Tuesday. Monday we'll do that special, and then Tuesday we're going to have a show as well. So stay tuned to the Progressive Mind Show. Tell a friend to tell a friend about it. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. Have a wonderful evening, gentlemen. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.